Even though I volunteered for years, I think I had this sense of volunteering as being a duty. It's my duty to volunteer, whether it's my kids' organizations or, whether it was even at church. I think it was in 2019 when the Be Rich opportunity came up. I don't know what was holding me back, but I just felt like I couldn't commit to that. When Be Rich came around this year, I was like, okay, that's it. In fact, I was so excited that when my husband and I left church that day and we got in the car, the first thing I did was I got my phone out and I'm scrolling through. I saw that the Salvation Army was one of the organizations and that a bell ringer was an option. And I thought, well, that'd be pretty cool. If nothing else, I'll say Merry Christmas and smile and hopefully, brighten people's day. It was a 4-hour shift, so I was about 3 hours into my shift. And this dear little elderly lady kind of came shuffling up to the kettle, and she opened her purse and she was just digging in the bottom of her purse to find some change. And she put it in the kettle and she looked at me and she said, "Thank you for doing this." And I was like, "No, ma'am, thank you for giving." And she said, "No, you don't understand." She said, "If it wasn't for Salvation Army, I wouldn't have received Christmas gifts as a child." And it just took my breath away. And I thought, wow, I'm standing here ringing a bell and, directly touching people's lives. And it just really changed my whole attitude and my whole thought of volunteering and what that means, because it wasn't about duty. It was about blessing. And something as simple as ringing a bell outside a grocery store, God used that to bless me. It's not just a commitment. It's stepping outside your comfort zone and allowing the Lord to bless you through it.
So I love hearing Robin's story, and it just causes me to think, why not? Why wouldn't we all choose to do something different? Different than what we would normally do, find an area to serve and get involved and be rich and do something that not only touches other people's lives, but I love as Robin talks, she actually says, this had more to do with me and God blessing me in the midst of this. And so through Be Rich, go to the website, LCBC Church/Be Rich, and you can find opportunities to serve for an hour, 2 hours. I mean, you can do whatever you want. I think it's cool that she decided to be a bell ringer for Salvation Army. And so there's all kinds of opportunities to serve. And so allow God to make a difference in your life as well in the lives of others. And can I just say, you guys have been just kind of blowing us away through Be Rich this year. It's really been fun to watch in the midst of even all of the just kind of chaos around us, that in the midst of all of that, you guys are stepping up when it comes to Be Rich, to the point where, from a giving standpoint, 2 weeks ago, we challenged you and said, what about $39.95? Or if you could do more, that's great, or less, that's okay. But just give that, and then that's all given out to these different organizations. And more than 25% higher than we've ever been before, you guys are giving. When it comes to shoe boxes, 4,000 or 5,000 shoe boxes have been taken out. You're bringing them back in this weekend. And then sponsorship for kids. Last weekend, about 1,400 kids were actually sponsored last weekend, and so amazing to see. And when you think of the sponsorships, that's something that's going to make a difference for not only that child, but for their family, for their community, and so a very, very cool thing. So way to go for stepping up and just showing what active love looks like and being rich in good deeds and the things that God is leading us to do. So way to go. I think it's very cool. Well, today, we actually need to have a family discussion. And I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, from time to time, my dad would pull us all into the living room. Actually, before he pulled us into the living room, he would pull us all together and say, we need to have a family talk. We need to have a family discussion. And typically, he would pull us into the living room. And that was about the only time that I can remember as a kid ever being allowed to go in the living room. In our home, we had a living room, we had the den, we had the kitchen. We didn't really have a dining room. So we pretty much hung out in the kitchen and the den, and family meetings seemed to be the times that we would go into the living room. And I don't know about you, but as a kid growing up, back then, to preserve the furniture that you never sat on anyway, my mom would always put this plastic covering on it, and it was awful because you'd sit on it, you'd stick to it, but we never went in there anyway, so it didn't so much matter. But we would have these family meetings. And so today we need to have a family meeting, a family discussion. And if you happen to be visiting with us today, then I would just say it's a great day for you to be here because you get to see how we just kind of conduct ourselves as a church family, and you get to hear what's important to us. So Solomon is considered one of the greatest, wisest men to ever live throughout all of history. And Solomon actually talked about the fact that there is a season for everything. Let me read you the words of Solomon. They'll be on the screen behind me as well. Solomon said, there's a time for everything. He said, for everything there's a season, a time for every activity under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to turn away, a time to search and a time to quit searching, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be quiet and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. Bottom line, he says, for everything there is a season. For every activity under heaven, there is actually a season. And even transitions, there are seasons for transitions. About 31 years ago, God brought Ruth and I to Pennsylvania from Texas to lead a little church called Lancaster County Bible Church, a church of about 150 people. And never at that time did we ever dream that we would experience what we've experienced here at LCBC. That LCBC, back then it wasn't LCBC, it was Lancaster County Bible Church. That Lancaster County Bible Church would morph into LCBC and become what it is today. And one of the very first conferences that the elders back then, I think there were 5 elders, counting myself, so 5 of us. And I'd been here, Ruth and I had been here for just a couple of months. And we went to Philadelphia with the elders and I. And the conference was how to break the 200 barrier, how to grow your church beyond 200 people. And that was a real big deal for us. And so as we were debriefing that conference, a couple months after that, we went to Ocean City, New Jersey. And I can remember sitting around the room at Ocean City. And the purpose of that was just to kind of dream about the future and talk about what God may do. What do we need to think about? What do we need to plan about for the future? And so I can remember going around the room. We actually asked each of the elders to write down on a piece of paper how big they thought potentially LCBC could become. And I think we said in the next 5 years. And we also just kind of challenged ourselves and said, let's just really dream and think bigger than God may do more than we might ever think or imagine. And so everybody went around the room, and then we revealed our numbers. And most of the numbers were 400, 450. I think there was a 750. I was real bold. I said 2,500 and thought, man, wouldn't that be cool? That's the size of the church that Ruth and I had been a part of in Dallas, and that was the size of some of the largest churches in Lancaster County at that time. And we thought, man, that would be amazing. But never did we dream that we would be almost 20,000 people, that we would have 18, 19 locations. God has done exceedingly more than we ever thought or possibly imagined. And never did Ruth and I, over the last 31 years, believe that LCBC was ours. What we really believed is that God was just allowing us to serve. And he was allowing us to lead here for the past 31 years. And what Ruth and I constantly say is, thank you, God. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of what you're doing here. Thank you for graciously allowing us to serve here. But we really believe now God is saying to us that it's time for a transition. It's time for a new season at LCBC. So a year from this weekend, not yet, but a year from this weekend, I will transition out of the role of senior pastor here at LCBC. And I won't be retiring. I'll still be involved in leading here at LCBC, working here at LCBC, but not as the senior pastor. And so essentially what I'm telling you today is that there's a 12-month clock, and the 12-month clock has actually started. And so I want to give you some background to the decision and how we kind of came to this point and how we made this particular decision. And it's been a decision that's been hard for us to come to, and a challenging one to kind of figure out what it all looks like. And yet, let me give you some background. About 15 years ago, our board of elders was challenged to read a book. The book was called Elephant in the Boardroom. An elephant in the boardroom is about the elephant. The elephant is succession. The elephant is transition. The elephant is about how do you replace the current leader with a new leader down the road. And the reason we had to discuss it, and the whole purpose of the book is to say most organizations don't talk about that. They don't think about it. They don't plan it. And so the elephant in the boardroom, the book was just saying, you need to plan it. You need to think it out. And so that was 15 years ago. And we talked and we discussed and we said, you know what, it seems like it's still too soon for us to be thinking about this too much. We need to keep it in mind, but we're not ready yet to come up with plans. And so probably about 9-10 years ago, Ruth and I had the opportunity with some friends, Ron and Holly Kreider, to go out to Boulder, Colorado. And Ron and I had opportunity to sit around a table of about 15 people with a business leader by the name of Jim Collins. Jim Collins is a business leader. He wrote a number of books, but one of his books that you may know of is Good to Great. And we had the opportunity to sit around a table with about 15 people with Jim Collins. And it was a fascinating day. And listening to Jim Collins, he talks about his levels of leadership. And he has 5 different levels of leadership. Level 5 is his top level of leadership. And Jim Collins said in that meeting, and he said before, but it really struck me in that meeting, he said, "You are not a level 5 leader in your organization until you've left the organization, and it's better with you gone than with you there." You're not a level 5 leader until you've left the organization, and the organization is better with you gone than with you there. And that comment resonated with me. And it caused me to say, okay, I want to do everything I can to make LCBC better when I'm gone than when I'm actually here. And see, what's interesting is that tends not to be the reality. And we don't even think in those terms. What happens is somebody leaves an organization, they lead an organization, they leave, the organization falls apart, and we all think, oh man, the chaos, the uproar, this person leaving, they must have been an incredible leader. The organization can't live without them. And Jim Collins would say, oh, that's not the sign of a good leader. Just the opposite of it is true. He says, if it falls apart, you didn't do a good job preparing and planning. So I came away from that time in Boulder with Jim Collins with this commitment that I want LCBC to be better with me gone than when I'm actually here. And so then I had to decide, what would it look like? What would it look like for LCBC to be stronger when I'm gone than when I'm actually here? And so one of the first things that I did is sat down and began working on what I thought was a 15-year plan. And if you've been around, you know I like plans. I love plans. And what's interesting, sometimes people say, oh, if you plan, you're not giving room for God to work. And I say, oh, no, totally wrong. As you are planning, God can be in those plans. And God nudges you as you write, as you work out those plans. He can change the plans at any time. I think God honors plans as opposed to just kind of waiting and let's just see what happens and see how God leads. And so been working that plan, a 15-year plan now, for about 10 years. So there's still 5 years to go on that plan. But I love plans. And so one of the first steps of that plan was to form what we called a succession team. And that succession team was actually made up of 4 of our former elder board chairmen. And that team has met now for the last 8-9 years, every year for about 3 times a year, just talking about our future and talking about where are we now, what do we need to do to prepare for the future, how do we plan for the future. And so one of the questions we had to ask, there were a couple questions we really focused on, but one of the questions that I deeply jumped into is, when will we know it's the right time? How will we know when it's time to make the transition? And so let me give you some of the things that I look at and say, okay, here's how I feel like I know. And the first one is just God's leading. God's nudges and just a sense of peace that, okay, this is what God is asking us to do. And so just trying to be real sensitive and saying, okay, God, we're working this plan, but we're trusting you. And if you want to change the plan, it's open-handed. You can change the plan, but guide us and lead us and nudge us. A second thing is just a growing appreciation for hearing multiple voices and multiple teachers around LCBC. Up until that point, I had been the primary teacher about 8-9 years ago. And so made a decision to say, okay, we need to start hearing from more voices and getting used to hearing multiple teachers. And it's been exciting to watch and fun to watch your responses over the years. And some of you kind of go, oh, we don't like this, but then eventually you've come to love the other teachers. And so it's been exciting to see this appreciation for multiple voices. Another indicator is just a real strong strategic leadership team. There's a group of 11 people that we call the strategic leadership team that are all staff, and they lead the day-to-day operations of the church. They kind of plan the expansion, vision, direction of the church, and we have an incredibly strong and solid strategic leadership team. And they're the team that I work most closely with, and I know that I'm going to miss deeply working with these 11 people. And so whenever I listen to, my ears are just keen to listen to people who make transitions. And so even listening to athletes, pro athletes, and you listen to them transition away from the game, and they'll say, you know what I miss most? I miss the locker room. And I'm going to miss the locker room and love working with our strategic leadership team. Another indicator for me is a highly functioning and highly capable staff. And I will just tell you, we have an incredible staff here at LCBC. We have about 250 people on our staff here at LCBC, and it's just been exciting to watch them become experts in what they do. And if they weren't experts, then when we hired them, then we do everything we can to help them develop and grow to become experts in what they do, to care for people and to lead people. And one of the ways that I know that our staff is good, several weeks back, we had an event we call All Access here, and we just open up the church on one particular day. It's a Monday each year, and we had 32 different churches, about 600 people from those 32 churches come, and just kind of allow our staff to say, hey, this is how we do church. We're not saying you should do it this way. We're not saying it's the only way. It's just this is how we do church. And our leaders get to lead other people in how we do church. And I just listen to those and go, man, that's amazing. We have an incredible staff. Another indicator for me is just a solid, stable, seasoned board of elders. And we've got a great group of elders. There are 9 elders, 8 not counting me. And I'll just tell you, one of my greatest joys is working with our elders. And oftentimes you'll hear pastors or churches talk about their boards. And they'll talk about, oh, what an awful experience it is. And that's not been the case here. We have an amazing board of elders that are strong and seasoned and wise and make incredibly strong choices for LCBC. And what's interesting for the ones, the kind of the indicators that I just gave you about our staff and the strategic leadership team and the elders, those are the things that I'm really, really going to miss because I love working with them, with people, which is so fascinating as I made this list because for me, I'm an introvert. And I'm real happy if it's just me and Ruth. But all the things that I love doing are working with those people specifically. And a couple of other indicators, financial stability is definitely one. And currently, we are in an amazing position at LCBC. Even in spite of COVID and what's gone on around us, we're actually in a position right now where we have no debt whatsoever, totally debt-free. 19 locations and probably $100 million in assets when you look at the value of the locations. We're in an incredibly strong position when it comes to finances. A favorable future. And we look at the future and we think there's some great things in store for us here. And opportunities for new locations, whether it be campuses, and we're working on 2 or 3 new campuses over the next several years. We've got what we call home gatherings, groups of anywhere from 15, 20, maybe 30 people that are starting to pop up around the state of Pennsylvania. We have community gatherings, groups of about 50 to 75 people. We have several of those popping up. And we look at the future and we think the future is incredibly strong and very favorable for us in the future. And then the last indicator for me was really just my ability to lead. I turned 65 about 2 weeks ago, and what's interesting is I don't feel it. I feel like I still got a lot of energy, and I feel like I still want to lead, and so this was really the only real strong question mark of, okay, how do we know? Because I still enjoy and thoroughly enjoy leading and want to be a part of leading, and as I say all that, can I just tell you, this whole decision and transition is not easy for me and for Ruth. You're our family. You're our family. And we raised our family here. And oftentimes people will say, what hobbies do you have, David? And oftentimes I'm told you have to have a hobby. And I go, you know what? I have no hobbies. I've got my family and I've got the LCBC family, and that's it. And so to walk away from this is going to be tough, and not be a part of it in the same capacity is going to be hard. So much so that Ruth was telling me last night after the Saturday evening gatherings, she said, you know, as I was driving to church, because we drive separately because I come early, and she said, as I was driving to church, she said, I felt like I was coming to a funeral. And I said, you know, it's interesting you say that. I felt that too, but I felt like I was coming to my funeral. I was like, you know, am I ready for this? And there's some things I know. I know that I'm going to miss. I love being your pastor. I love seeing life change. Ruth and I, we thrive on stories of lives that are being changed by Jesus Christ. I love being a part of our team, meaning the staff. I love watching them grow and develop and just mature and become experts and, I think, world-class leaders and followers of Jesus. I love developing plans and then executing those plans and seeing them come to fruition. And then And there's one other thing that I almost hesitate to tell you, but I love being in charge. and it's like, oh, man. So I know that it's going to be tough, but I also know and believe 100% it's the right thing. And we sang earlier about surrendering. And for me, this has been an issue of just saying, okay, God, I'm surrendering to whatever you want and whatever you think is best. So the first question we had to wrestle with is this the right, how will we know? Is it the right time? How will we know when the right time is? The second question, and maybe one of the most important, is who will be my replacement, and how do we figure that out? And so again, we've been working on this for 8, 9, 10 years, and there's several stories of succession in the Bible. We always kind of go back and say, okay, what examples, what models, what instructions do we have from the Bible to figure out how to do things? And so you go back, and there are no real models for succession in the Bible. There's stories. I mean, you've got Moses and Joshua, you've got Paul and Timothy in the New Testament, but they're not really directions on how to do succession. And so we studied succession, trying to figure out the best way to do things. And essentially, you've got two choices. You can work externally. You can bring somebody in from outside of the organization to lead the organization, or you find somebody internally that can lead the organization. And what we discovered as we were studying this is if you go outside the organization externally and you bring somebody in, then typically you'll do that if you're not pleased, if you don't like the direction you're going as an organization. If you want to change directions, then go externally. If you want to stay the same course, then you go internally. And somebody actually created or showed me, they kind of drew it on paper, this kind of example to figure it out. If you have a target, and this is a target, and so for us the target is who will be my replacement? Who are we going to hire to lead LCBC into the future and designate that? And so if you start with somebody internally, and if it's an arrow, you shoot the arrow, it goes through the target, you keep going the same direction. You're not changing directions as you move forward. It hits the target, but you keep going the same direction. But if you go externally, you may still hit the target, but if you watch where the arrow goes, you hit the target, but it actually takes you a whole different direction. And as we thought about where we are as a church and what we need to be doing as a church, we said, okay, we don't think we need to change directions. We love where we're going, where we're headed, and so we want to stay internally with our selection, if at all possible. And so the question was, again, 8, 9 years ago, do we have somebody that is capable, that would be fitting to put in this role? And so my belief 8, 9 years ago was, yeah, I think we do. I think it's going to be Jason Mitchell. But 8 or 9 years ago, as this succession team kind of talked about that, they go, oh, I don't know. 8 or 9 years ago, is Jason ready for this kind of thing? And at the time, Jason had been at LCBC for maybe 8, 9 years. He came just right out of college and worked in middle school for us as one of our directors, then led student ministry. And so there was growth, but there was still opportunity for growth as well. And so 8 or 9 years ago, we said, okay, a plan. Why not have a plan, a development plan, to kind of just help Jason grow? What areas do we feel like it would be beneficial for him to grow? And so some of the areas, we said, man, what can we do just to help him strengthen as a communicator? Because that's one of the primary roles of this leader, is a communicator. And so what can we do to help him strengthen his communication skills? We said, what about business skills? Because LCBC is a church, but this is a big organization. As I said, 250 staff, 19 locations, and so you got to have some business sense in doing this. And so we put Jason into a cohort with Les McEwen. Les McEwen wrote a book called Predictable Success. He's just a great business leader. We said, okay, Jason, we need you to spend time with other business leaders. We gave him lots and lots of opportunities to lead, whether it was going to Branch Creek and being the campus pastor there, whether it was coming back here and then leading our ministry teams, whether it's leading things for our staff we call Huddle, and just every opportunity we could find to help Jason lead. He worked on his education and got a master's degree in theology, and just really over time had opportunity to gain wisdom. And the word I love to use is seasoning, or just opportunity to see things, experience things, and understand how things work. And so lots of opportunity for seasoning, and then lots and lots of opportunity for time with me. Jason and I have spent a ton of time together over the last 8, 9 years, and that's, again, been another joy of mine, to have that opportunity to spend so much time with Jason. And so after 7 years of kind of working this plan, about a year ago, the succession team actually came to the point of saying, they were ready to make a recommendation to our board of elders that, yeah, we think Jason is ready to be considered to be our senior pastor in the future. And so the elders spent about 6, 8 months just evaluating, lots and lots of conversations, interviews with Jason, and then in June, of this summer, made the decision and said, yeah, we are ready to recommend to the church family that Jason be my successor. And still trying to figure out the timing of it, but said, yeah, we think we have an internal candidate. We think Jason would be a great choice to be the successor. And so bottom line, then it came down to timing. And when is the right time for this? Now, again, remember, my whole goal in this thing is to say, how do we make sure that LCBC is better when I'm gone than when I'm here? And so as I look at all of this, and I look at, again, those indicators. So again, the indicators, God's leading, his nudges, a sense of peace that he's leading us in this direction, your appreciation of other multiple voices and speakers, a strong strategic leadership team, just a highly functioning and highly capable staff, solid, stable, seasoned leadership from our board of elders, financial stability, a favorable future, and again, my ability to lead. And what I had to step back and say, it's not about me. It's about LCBC being stronger when I'm gone than when I'm here, and just being ready to say, okay, God, if you want this, then it's ready for me. I'm ready to surrender if that's what you want. And then the last indicator is believing, okay, Jason is ready for this kind of transition. So my recommendation, the recommendation of the Board of Elders at LCBC is that Jason Mitchell become our senior pastor when I transition in 1 year. So pretty much a year from today. And again, what we're doing is simply starting the clock and saying this is 12 months away, it's coming, it's going to happen. And over the next several weeks, you're going to hear more about our plans, about Jason, and actually it's leading up to a vote in just 3 weeks, December 11th, 12th, 13th, a vote. And you'll hear more about this in letters, emails. You'll have opportunities to ask questions if you'd like. And if you're an LCBC partner, then we're going to ask you to affirm Jason is our next senior pastor at LCBC beginning at the end of next November. Now, just a reminder, this is a year away, so don't push me out the door yet, okay? So we still got a year. And I'm not retiring. I'll just be in a different role, and I'll still be supporting and still be involved at LCBC and representing LCBC. Now, throughout all this, one of my favorite verses is Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20, which says, now all glory to God, who is able through his mighty work within us, meaning he works through us, to accomplish infinitely more than we might think or ask. God is able to accomplish more than we might ever think or ask. And I look at the past 35 years, and in October we celebrated 35 years of what God has been doing around LCBC. And I say God has already done more than any of us ever dreamed or thought possible. But I also tell you, God's not finished yet. Because part of what makes LCBC who it is you. You are LCBC. And I believe God looks at you and he looks at all of us and he says, I've got more plans. If you're willing to follow, he said, I will still do more, exceedingly more than you might ever think or possibly dream or even imagine. And so I'm excited about the future of LCBC. Now, one of the things that you may not know about LCBC, there's a magazine called Outreach Magazine, and they study churches and stuff. And so this past year, they actually listed LCBC as the 9th largest church in the United States, which, when you stop and think about it, that's incredible. 400,000 churches in the United States. LCBC is the 9th largest. You look at all the big cities, and here out in the middle cornfields and just kind of throughout central Pennsylvania is LCBC and the 9th largest church. And so a couple things that I just say about that. We realize, when I say we, the succession team, the board of elders, realize that because of who LCBC is, we had the opportunity to pick anybody pretty much in the country. I mean, it's an attractive church to come and lead. And we could have gone pretty much with anybody throughout the country. And we talked about that, and we looked, and we said, you know what? We think our choice of anybody throughout the country is Jason. And so we're excited about that for the future. But a couple distinctives for us as a church. LCBC has never been about a person. It's not been about a person and who's leading, and it never really should be. And my goal for LCBC, for myself, was that LCBC would last way beyond me. My goal has been that it'll last way beyond you. If we base it on a person, then when that person steps away, everything falls apart. But it's not about a person. It's about what God is doing here. And it's also not about trying to make LCBC famous. And the reason why I say that is somebody actually said to me a week or two ago, they said, you know what, LCBC is probably the largest church in the United States that most people have never heard of. And we kind of go, yeah, that's actually true. And we like that. Because it's not about making LCBC famous, it's about making Jesus famous. And it's about us pursuing our mission of introducing more people to Jesus and all of us continuing to follow Jesus. It's all of us, it's you making Jesus famous. And it's impacting the state of Pennsylvania. And so I just say all that to say I can't wait to see what is ahead, and I'm excited about where God is leading us. Now, again, this is a family meeting, your family. And so a couple things I would just say to you as family members. Each of us have a role here. The Bible talks about us as being a body, and every part of the body is important. Every single one of you are important. Every single one of you have a role to play here at LCBC, and you may say, I'm not playing one. Then you need to find one. And do your role and do it well. That's what will allow us to experience God doing more than we could ever possibly dream or think or imagine. Another thing that I would say to you, that we say to the staff all of the time, don't do anything stupid to mess up what God is doing. And as you look around the country, and as you look at history, and you look at what messes up churches, it's stupidity. Typically, it has to do with issues of pride. Typically, it has to do with issues of selfishness. And people wanting their own way, or people wanting to be recognized, or people, and we say, oh, let's not do anything stupid to mess up what God is doing here. God is doing incredible things, and so let's not mess it up. And usually it's when relationships go sideways. And so let's make sure our relationships stay strong. And then the third thing I just say, our part is, man, what we're experiencing is unique. So don't take it for granted. Enjoy it. And we tend to think because we're here, this is what everybody experiences in church. It's not what everybody experiences in church. This is incredibly unique. And so enjoy what God is doing. Jump in, be a part of it. Find your place and your part. And let's see where God takes us. Now, Jason, I'm going to ask you to come for a minute. As Jason's coming up, let me just say to you, one of the values for us as a staff, and we have a lot of values that are written down, but we've got some that are not written down, and one of our values is no surprises. And for the most part, I don't like surprises, and for the most part, our board of elders don't like surprises. And so I have this agreement with the elders that I will not, at least to the best of my knowledge and ability, not ever allow anything to surprise them of what's going on around the church. And I would say that's kind of the goal for all of you as well. But you may say, oh, this feels like a surprise today. But I would also say, come on, this isn't really a surprise. We've been making this as obvious as we possibly can to say, okay, here's going to be the next leader. And so maybe timing is a surprise, but as far as who the successor will be, we've done everything we can without just flat out saying that we think Jason is going to be the person that leads us in the future. But here's what I know. One of the things that Jason and I have learned over the last 8-9 years now of talking about this, and even though we've been talking about it for so long, it's still just kind of an interesting time for us now that it's becoming public, because there's something bittersweet about it. It's sweet from the standpoint that we are excited for Jason in the future and where God's going to take us. The bitter side is, at least for me, is I've got to step away and not be in the same position. And so there's this kind of, Jason, there's this tension that you and I have felt, and we've talked about a ton, and we've had to wrestle through, where on one hand there's a sense of loss, on the other side there's a sense of great joy. And so it's funny, I've kind of said, well, first let me ask you, how are you feeling with this? And just kind of as you think through this, because again, it's bittersweet, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think the way, you just described that tension and that mixture of emotions, I felt at a very personal level. Jenny has felt. I still can't talk about it with Jenny without her crying. And then I'm like, are you excited? Of course she's excited. We're deeply, so you got these two things living side by side. Yeah. We are deeply humbled and incredibly honored to have the support of the board, to have your support, David, and to have walked, with this church. We've grown up here, for lack of a better word. And it's family to us as well. And so we're so honored and grateful and excited. And yet, living right next to that, David's been my pastor for 19 years. And I'm a better man because of David. And I am a better husband because of David. And I'm a better father because of David. And Ruth right by his side. We have taken our cues as a family, Jenny and I, based on watching David and Ruth. We've spent many hours, many hours, you and I, good gracious, together.
And the funny thing is, as a family, so we used to spend more time together because early on, we would watch Survivor together. And
Yeah.
then at some point, Jason decided Survivor wasn't cool anymore, and he quit
Yeah.
watching Survivor. So,
I think the rest of the world decided Survivor wasn't cool. And that was 2008, David. So
it was a long time. Yeah, we're on, I think, season 212.
Yeah, I
believe.
think so.
It's good. So, yeah.
So all that to say, I mean, we've seen, my heart grieves to a degree, and that says nothing about the excitement that we have, but we're having to live with those two things side by side as well, and.
Yeah, because it's interesting for me. So again, selfishly, if I'm honest with you, I want you to be. The Bible has a term, weeping and gnashing of teeth. And so when you hear this, I want you to be weeping and gnashing your teeth in all of this. And so that's one side of it. But the other side, there's that sense of excitement for the future and what's coming. And so there's tension there. And so bottom line, we just want to say to you, we understand that. We get that. We're experiencing that. And it's okay for you to experience that too. And we want you to be comfortable, both sides of it, to say it's okay to mourn with me, and it's okay to be excited with Jason in the future. And so we kind of said it's similar to almost like passing a baton, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's the metaphor we've been sort of working with for a lot of years now. It's just that it's a baton pass. And when you think about a race and you watch a relay race, the way that relay races are won is that baton pass has to be done exceptionally well. And the way that you do a baton pass exceptionally well, it requires two things. One is the one handing the baton has to hand it off at peak speed. That's a really important principle for a leader, because that requires a remarkable level of humility and self-awareness to not wait until you're slowing down to hand it off, but to hand it off when you still have some in the tank. I think we all understand. David, you're a level 5 leader, and you have left that legacy for us here, and we are so grateful for that. On the other side, when you're receiving the baton, the one who's receiving it, you can't grab it. You can't just take it, or else you drop it. And so that's where I think, for us, David, if we look back and over these years and where we've shed the most tears probably together privately, where we've been frustrated at times, it's probably been in that having to hand it and me wanting to grab it but not wanting to. So it's been that. And I think we've just agreed that we're going to live with that tension. And I think it's made all the difference for us.
And that handoff isn't easy. I mean, you guys have watched enough of the Olympics. It's probably the only time we watch track and field is at the Olympics. But we've watched enough of United States 4x4 teams drop the baton, not even make it to the finals. And so we say we don't want to drop the baton. We want this to go well as we move forward.
And I want to say this. I think it's important for you guys to hear me say this. I shared this with our staff. I've shared this last night as well. But I want you to hear me say this. David and Ruth, as long as they are around and as long as I'm here, they will be honored at this church in every way. And they will have a part to play in what God is doing at this church. And I am extraordinarily grateful. And my love doesn't really have a lot of boundaries for David and Ruth and their family. And I'm watching you as you're talking, David. I'm kind of backstage and I'm watching. I'm seeing a lot of people nod their heads, but also wiping tears. My guess and my sense is that you understand that fundamentally. I think the love that this church has for you, David, and Ruth as well. And we're so grateful, just so grateful for you.
Cool. Thank you. So as we, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You can stay standing because we're going to sing here in just a second. So I pretty much, I didn't quite make it through this without crying, but you guys are going to make me do that. So we just want you to know there's tension to be felt. It's okay to feel that tension, but we're real excited about the future. Now let me just say a couple things that I know. And one of the things that's been cool over the last 35 years is we know that God is faithful, and we know God is good. God's been incredibly good to LCBC over the last 35 years. He's going to be good in the future. That doesn't change. God is incredibly faithful, and we know that's going to happen. And so this is where we trust God. And we say, okay, God, take us and lead us. continue to guide us, continue to be faithful, continue to do more than we could ever possibly dream or imagine. So Matt and the team are actually going to lead us, and we're going to talk to God, and we're going to sing about God's faithfulness and about God's goodness. And I will say one of the things, again, what I love about being a part of LCBC is just working with people. And Matt is one of my favorite people to work with. And so thinking, it's funny, we go through Easter weekends, we go through Christmas Eve weekends, and we'll do lots and lots and lots and lots of gatherings. And they're tiring, but they're also incredibly exhilarating as well. And pretty much every time after the last gathering, Matt and I connect, and we don't often hug, but we typically hug after those, and just kind of go, I can't imagine doing this with anybody else. What an incredible experience this has been. So very much appreciate Matt and his relationship, his friendship, and his leading over the years. So Matt's going to lead us. We're going to sing about God's faithfulness and God's goodness to us.
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire in darkest night. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God, yeah. 'Cause your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. 'Cause your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Oh, I'm gonna sing, oh, 'cause all my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Let's sing that again. Oh, great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me.
So God has been good. God continues to be good. He will be good in the future. And God is faithful. And that's an amazing thing about our God. In spite of who we are, in spite of what we do, God continues to love us, and he's faithful to us. So this is Kevin Laura. Kevin Laura is the chairman of our board of elders right now. Kevin is a friend. Kevin's a doctor. Kevin's a friend. He's a leader. And so Kevin's going to lead us in prayer and say, God, just be with our church as we move forward. And excited about what God's done in the past, but really excited about what he's going to do in the future. So Kevin, lead us if you would.
Thank you, David. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we just thank and praise you for who you are. Father, we thank you for what you have done, what you are doing, and what you're going to do at and through LCBC. Lord, thank you for David and Ruth and their faithful service for over 30 years. Thank you for David's leadership, his focus, and Lord, just thank you for his humility. We've all been affected, challenged, and blessed by his practical teaching. Thank you for his encouragement, and thank you for the challenge to each one of us to introduce people to Jesus and together fully follow him. Thank you, Lord, for Ruth, her care, her love, her support for David, and for the LCBC family. Lord, we just ask your blessing on them throughout the transition and for years to come. Lord, thank you for Jason and Jenny, their commitment to you, to each other, and LCBC. We ask you continue to guide and direct their steps. And we ask you bless them for their willingness to serve you in a new role. Lord, thank you for the staff, for the partners, for the volunteers, and their commitment to serve others. Lord, we ask for your protection through this transition. We ask for your guidance, we ask for your provision, and Lord, we ask for a spirit of unity in affirming Jason as the next senior pastor. Heavenly Father, we thank and praise you for your love for each one of us. We thank you for your son, Jesus, and the life we have only through him. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Well, guys, thank you. I made it through this without bawling all the way through, so that was good. So I hope you have a great Thanksgiving and a great week. I hope you know that we love you and excited about what God has in store for each and every one of us in the future. And as you go this week, may the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord smile on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord show you his favor and give you his peace. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next week.